Listen, I'm going to break down the different location type options you have for a Google business profile. This is also a very hot topic when it comes to franchise brands asking me questions about this, particularly in the service industry where you service a territory, trying to figure out what the optimal combination of things are here for different franchisees and what the results are of having it one way versus the other way from a perspective of SEO in this case. So let's just get right into it. The big thing here is I screenshotted exactly what Google says about your how you deal with the location. If you don't serve customers at your business address, do not enter an address under the info tab in the business profile manager. Leave the business location field blank. So the key takeaway here is if you don't serve customers at your business address, you do not let customers into your office, into a home office, into a co-working space, whatever it may be. That's the clear differentiation here. And so let's talk about all three options here. The first option would be the one that Google's alluding to here is your storefront or office location type. In this case, you're clearly serving customers at your location, whether it be a storefront, retail location, restaurant, whatever it may be, or office. This could easily be a home office. This could easily be a co-working space office, sublease, anything you want it to be. If you're serving customers into your location, into an office space, you would qualify for the option of listing your business as a storefront slash office. And so a lot of people will say, oh, and again, I mentioned a lot of this in the Google business profile verification, suspension section. So you can go back there and really hear what I have to say about that. But essentially, you can get away with having a location in a obviously a brick and mortar is going to be the best case scenario, physical office location that's yours. You can use the co-working space in a residence like your house, home office, garage, outhouse, whatever you want it to be. Could be a dirt lot with the temporary office you see in some construction sites and things like that. They're perfectly fine. All of them are. It just sometimes Google will put you under a little more scrutiny when you utilize a co-working space or your home residence. So all that means you have to be even more diligent and careful to follow the rules and not try to go around the rules or cut corners because you're just at a higher risk of getting suspended. And when you get suspended, you have to defend yourself. When you have to defend yourself, you have to have all your ducks in a row. So you can go back and watch the lesson about verifying and re-verifying your or reinstating your Google business profile. That'll give you a lot more details on all the things you need to have in place. But in this case, you absolutely can do it. You just have to make sure you're jumping through those hoops. Some of the compliance issues in this case, a lot of times people always ask me, and it's a little outdated, is can I get a mailbox? Go to a mailbox store, UPS store, or your local mom and pop mailbox store. Some people get away with it. Years ago, it was easy to get away with it. So some people set them up years ago and have basically been grandfathered in until somebody turns them in. Could probably continue to get away with it. If you were to go do it right now, if you try to do it in a UPS store, it won't work. I mean, maybe there's 1 in a million that'll work. It won't work. Google has those things blacklisted. Probably postal annexes and a bunch of other known post office box type of or mailbox store type of scenarios. You might get away with a mom and pop location that Google hasn't really pinholed as a mailbox store in that case. So you could maybe get away with it there, but I just wouldn't, especially if you're trying to build a legitimate business in the long run. You're just putting yourself at unnecessary risk. I know it might seem attractive to get a $20 mailbox and use that as your business, but everything would have to go right for you for that to hold up, and it may not even be able to get verified in the first place. On the other thing is just post office boxes, PO boxes. Those are already all blacklisted and they won't work, so I wouldn't even bother trying. But I always get questions about setting up mailboxes and things like that. So hopefully it's clear on what a storefront and office is, when it comes to a service area business, this is an option where you service a territory, but you do not let anybody into your office. Nobody's coming to your home office. If it's a temporary office in a field or in a job site, you're not allowing customers or clients to go in there. You're not servicing customers, anything like that. You're simply existing to go serve people in their homes or somewhere off site. In this scenario, you would leave your business location field blank, and then you go in there and you add up to 20 service areas. This is where there's a variety of options. You can add cities, suburbs, regions, zip codes, lots of things, lots of options here, but you can put 20 of them in there. That helps Google understand which areas you service and what you represent. Now, not that it should matter to most of you, but Google will allow up to 200 miles away from your location to be listed here. The only thing I want to throw out there, it's very unlikely in a competitive market that Google will rank you and show your Google business profile 200 miles away from your office. It's always going to be close to where your office's address is verified at, and then it grows out from there as far as where your business will be potentially seen. So even though Google allows 200 miles, unless you're the only game in town for 200 miles and there's no competitors, you're probably not gonna stretch your business across that 200 miles. So you can put it in there so your customers know that you service their area, but don't necessarily assume that because you have that in there, that means you're going to rank in that area. The other thing I want to point out here that becomes very important and becomes a very sensitive topic around if your Google business profile gets suspended, especially in a franchise system where you have potentially multiple Google business profiles in the same city because you have different franchisees serving the same city. They just serve different regions of the city, or in some cases I've seen franchise brands have some type of shared territory where everybody can serve an entire city, but they are located in certain areas versus the other. But anyway, what you need to worry about here is having, let's say, 2, 3, 4, 5 Google business profiles that all list the same city or suburb in their profile. Now, it gets challenging when everybody's in Houston, right? You want to put Houston in there. You could probably get away with that. It's when you break down and put zip codes, or you put regions of Houston, or you put suburbs of Houston. When somebody goes, when I say somebody, when Google is, you're in the process of getting your suspended profile or new profile verified, and you actually get a real person at Google looking at your account and trying to determine whether you should be verified or not. If they see the same brand, a Google business profiles from the same brand that are servicing the same service area, sometimes this becomes a hang up, and this is why you would not get verified or reinstated. So just know that if you run into trouble getting your listing verified or reinstated, go take a look at your other franchisees and make sure that there's some clear definition between these service areas, these 20 service areas. And so I just wanted to point that out. Now, the third option on this list is the hybrid option. The hybrid option is where you do allow customers at your location, your storefront, your office, but you also service an area. Okay, so this could be common if you are a remodeling company or a company that remodels houses. I've seen lots of brands that will have showrooms where they list all their materials and show all the brands that they work with and give homeowners options to choose what type of materials they want to work with, or try to look at different fixtures, whatever it may be. But then they go install the product at the customer's house or the homeowner's house. So that's one example where you'd have a storefront, but then you'd also service someone's house. Even roofing companies will have, in some cases, a retail office where customers will come in there and look at different types of shingles, discuss the project, whatever it may be, but then the roof is obviously installed at somebody's house. This also could be a scenario where a personal trainer has a gym they work out of, but then they also could service some people out of their homes and things like that. There's lots of scenarios where this is possible. This is where you would enter the address of where you have your primary place of business, and you would be listed as a storefront. but then you also can add service areas. And so this is where it becomes a kind of a challenge in the case that you still need to make it look like a storefront, even if it's just a place where you can maybe occasionally serve customers or clients. And then you primarily go to their homes or or place of business, wherever it may be, to service them. But you still need to make sure your office or business has permanent signage. Okay. So you still need to check the same boxes and jump through the same hoops as a storefront office location would need to have. But in this case, you're getting the best of both worlds. So one thing I want to point out in these scenarios are, actually, let me go ahead and go to the next slide, is this is where you would enter the information. So you see in this is the Google business profile. Maybe by the time you're watching this lesson, Google's changed how this looks, but for the most part, it should look like this. Under business location section, under the location tab at the top, you enter your address. Okay. Now under your address, you would enter your service areas. In this scenario, it would be a hybrid location where you can accept people at your office in this case, but then you service an area around that office for businesses in that area. And so in this case, you could go to their office and meet with them and service them in their areas. So, and I want to point out, when you look at these service area sections, you can see there's different cities in there. But if you look closely, you can see that there's communities, there's little regions of the city, there's little suburbs. So you can see it says Quail Hill, but it's in Irvine, California. Woodbridge in Irvine, California. Down below, there's University Town Center in Irvine, California. You can see in those cases, you see zip codes on those as well, things like that. So if you're a franchisee and you are in a region of a city, and you maybe share that city with other franchisees, this is where you'd want to go into that more granular level and list suburbs and regions and things like that help tightly identify your service area. And again, you could just do it. Zip codes is also options. Basically, any geographic name you see on Google Maps is something that you can select. I would just start typing things in there. If you're aware of names or nicknames or things like that, unincorporated cities, just start searching in the search bar where the service area section is, and there's a good chance something will pop up. So just try to do the best you can at getting as granular as possible when you're dealing with a scenario where you have multiple franchisees in a single city. Last thing I want to mention here is two things. One, recently, more than ever, Google, it seems to be a correlation that Google is favoring businesses that have a storefront or physical office that accepts customers or clients at their office. So I've heard a lot of people even say it's more than that. I'm just kind of being conservative by saying it's about a 10 to 20% bump. I'm working with franchisees that have an actual storefront where they bring customers in the same franchise system. There's some franchisees that don't have a storefront. They work out of their home or they work out of a co-working space. So they're just using that as a home base, but then they actually service customers. And so they just set themselves up as a service area business. I definitely see it producing less business and less visibility. Not 100% sure if it's just something Google is throttling back on, or if it's a result of the fact that when people are in Google and they're searching for roofing company, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, that when you look at the map, there's that little red pin. If you look in this map on this slide here, there's a little red pin. That only shows up if you're a storefront office or hybrid. If you set your business up as a service area only, that little red pin doesn't exist. You can still rank in the top 3, can rank in the top 10 as a business, but the pin doesn't show up on there because you're not really you're basically hiding the fact of where your address is located, so Google can't put that pin on there. And so there's a possibility that by having that pin, customers or clients are more likely to click on your listing, because then they can see visually where you're at in their area. And maybe that's bringing a correlation of why it produces more. But I think it's Google actually throttling service area businesses back a little bit, dialing it back. And this is probably something I've seen in the last 8-9 months to a year being more prominent than the past. In the past year or two ago, I would say, no, there's no difference. I've seen everybody show up the same. Now I would skew that towards the benefit of being a storefront or a hybrid. Again, 6 months from now, Google could change it back and everything balances out. I don't know. You never know with Google. Just want to throw that out there. And then The last thing I want to point out, a very slight little tip here, when you're when your franchisee gives you their address and you just start blindly using that address, what I would do is I would check Google, what Google thinks of that address. And so paste the address, full address in Google search, and the first thing you'll see pop up is a map with an address under it. If that address is different in any way from the address that you have listed above, I would go with the address that Google gives you. Sometimes people, as communities are growing or cities are growing, they'll change zip codes. Sometimes they'll change even the city name. You see this a lot. Sometimes they'll use unincorporated. Sometimes the franchisee will give you an unincorporated city, or they'll add a suite number or things like that. That's different than what Google is showing. I recommend going with the exact address Google is using, because Google isn't as smart as you think they are. And when you can just use the exact address that they see, as long as it still goes to your location as your address, maybe just a slight different version of it, I would go with that, because you're making it that much easier for Google to know where you are. When you throw in an address that's slightly different, you're making them think. You're making them work hard to coordinate your business at that location. And so as a little benefit that makes your life easier, especially early on, I would go with that address. In a lot of cases, Google doesn't use the word suite. They might change it to something else, like number A or number B or number 100, the number sign, the pound sign. And so sometimes it's unit, sometimes it's suite. So that's where I see a lot of differences. Google is supposed to use the addresses that come right from the USPS, but they're behind. So if USPS changes something, sometimes it's just a franchisee. They're in like some new area of a city that is in that city, but it has some other identifying city name or some unincorporated city name, which happens a lot. The USPS is not caught up with that, or if they're caught up with it, Google's not, and they're using an older database, whatever it may be. I recommend using the address Google has as like a slight benefit to make your life easier on being able to coordinate your business at an address and giving Google confidence where you're located. So hopefully this lesson gave you some insight on the differences between the location types. Again, I get lots of questions around this, so I wanted to dedicate a whole lesson around this to give you all the details and all the information I have. And so hopefully you have everything you need to do to make the right choice for your franchise brand.